Howdy, and welcome to a bonus episode of Wise About Texas, your award-winning Texas podcast. I'm Ken Wise, the host of Wise About Texas, and thank you very much for tuning in to this very special episode of Writing Texas History, where I interview Brian Kilmeade, the well-known host of Fox and Friends on the Fox News Network, as well as the Brian Kilmeade Show on the radio. But what you may not know about Mr. Kilmeade is he loves history. And I had the opportunity, he has written, his most recent book is called Sam Houston and the Alamo Avengers. So here's someone of national prominence who is a passionate historian, but did not grow up in Texas writing about Texas history. So I could not pass up the opportunity to find out what that's all about and why the story of Sam Houston and Texas independence appealed so much to someone from outside Texas. During the interview, you're going to hear Mr. Kilmeade talk about his passion for history and his passion for Texas and the spirit of Texas and how he feels like that the rest of the country can learn something from that. You'll also hear Mr. Kilmeade discuss some of his favorite historical stories and how important he feels it is to do his part to communicate history to the country through his books. And of course, that's one of the reasons I've mentioned several times on this show that I'm doing this podcast, because if we don't study history, we're going to lose it. So I hope you enjoy this interview with Brian Kilmeade. Keep in mind this interview was conducted over the phone, so the audio will sound a little different. But thanks again for tuning in to this bonus episode of Writing Texas History, an interview with Brian Kilmeade. Brian, thanks for sitting down with Wise About Texas today, and welcome to the podcast.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, especially in Texas. I'll be heading down there a lot in November and December, and had a chance to travel all around doing the special for Fox. It's going to be November 17th, and then I did something for Fox Nation just on the Alamo. So to be able to finally talk about the book after 2.5 years with people who understand how special this history is an honor.
Well, that's great. We'll look forward to welcoming you down here. You mentioned Fox, and most of the listeners of this show will probably recognize you from Fox and Friends, but you also do radio after you get off television. That's a lot of talking every day. How do you manage that?
It's fun, and it's a lot of studying, but I love it. And when I have free time, I've always read history in the past, and that was my idea of an escape. It also gives me context when things go wrong. I think to myself, well, this is an overreactor, reminds me of this period, or this country's history gives me an idea why they're acting this way. But when I was having a chance to really dive into these different stories in our past, I just loved every second of it. And to be able to talk about it on the radio, whether it's building it up or making it part of the show, to me is fun. I'd be the annoying guy at the water cooler at the deli if I wasn't doing this for a living.
Well, that's kind of why I started the podcast. Everybody was sick and tired of telling me to shut up. But where did that interest in history come from?
There's different things. I thought about that all the time. Is that some people I talk to, they play golf once and they don't stop. They become, whether they love to gamble. They have a passion for gambling and being part of it. Passion for sports. You and I can relate to that.
Right.
I get it. Where does it come from? I don't know. Maybe your dad took you to a game. I just remember sitting in history, and which we call social studies, and loving it. And I'm just saying to myself, I don't know, I got lucked out with some great teachers. And my first show I ever saw, and no one's ever asked me that before, but the first show I saw that gave me my passion, and it's a show probably your listeners have never seen before, but it was Mike Wallace on biography. And when he would look at Eleanor Roosevelt or Thomas Edison or people in the past, Adam Smith, I go, I couldn't believe how interesting this was, as opposed to one-pagers. You go deep into people and incidents. Couldn't get enough of it. And we had Sagamore Hill near us, where Teddy Roosevelt's from, and that really comes to life. And then when I found out about George Washington's spies, and he had this hidden spy ring, and they lived and died without any fame and acclaim, that fueled it even more, and that ended up being my first history book.
And you've written several history books. What are you up to now? 6 or 7?
Well, it was six overall. Two were sports related, and four. This is my fourth on history. It was George Washington's Secret Six, aspiring to save the American Revolution, and then it was Thomas Jefferson and the Tripoli Pirates. It was Thomas Jefferson's first war on terror and America's first war on terror, and how he dealt with Islamic extremism back then. And then Andrew Jackson, Miracle of New Orleans, because with the War of 1812, I've always been fascinated with how close we came to total obliteration, having Washington burned, not having a standing army, the north part of the country not wanting to fight the war, and this 13-year-old orphan who emerged. He should have been a vagrant or a criminal, but ended up being this great major general, attorney general, senator, and two-term president, Andrew Jackson. I thought I wanted to tell that story, how he became famous, Battle of New Orleans, and then this, when I have Sam Houston fighting, and that's how I open up the book. He's fighting with under Andrew Jackson against the Creek Warriors, and they need a total victory. He takes three shots. One, as you know, right by his groin, right from his pelvis. Another, and two in the upper, one in the arm and one in the shoulder. And one or two would never really fully heal the rest of his life. When you see the valor and courage he's shown then, and the lessons he learned in 1814, and how it shaped who he became later, I thought I could really pick up this story where I left off with Andrew Jackson.
Well, and you did a great job. I've read it. You're a great storyteller.
Thank
And
you.
is that really, you've just described a series of stories that caught your eye, which you turned into book. Is that really what you love about history, the stories, pulling the stories out of the facts?
I do, and I do, and I'm under the belief that even though we give attention to our founding fathers and the fantastic generals from Eisenhower to Washington, and you pick up the book because you might recognize Sam Houston, although that's the biggest stretch, but you know Houston, and you see Jackson and Jefferson, you go, this is worth my time. I believe America's made up of those so-called average, everyday people doing extraordinary things who never get or seek the fame and acclaim. And if you talk to these great people, they will tell you. You know, you're attracted to Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie and William Barrett Travis. I get it, but they will tell you the people to the left and right who have fought by their side, who don't get the acclaim, they're just as big a heroes. And America is fueled by things like George Washington's Secret Six, when a farmer, a shopkeeper, a socialite, a printer who was really a journalist, um, and a longshoreman teamed together for not even a country, the cause of a country, the idea of a country. Washington knew it. Washington knew it wasn't just about him and his aide de camp Alexander Hamilton. He knew it was those faceless, nameless farmers fighting with great valor against a standing British army. These are the people that made our country great. And if I could put the spotlight on them, and I also know I don't have the ability of David McCullough or John Meacham to take a famous person and bring new nuances to their background. I can't redo Grant. I don't read Ron Chernow's Grant and think I can do better. I
Right.
know I can't. But if I could bring up something around Grant, then maybe I'm fulfilling a service.
Well, we certainly need that more and more every day, it seems to me, as I watch current events. Talk a little more about why you picked Sam Houston. We talked about his 1812 service. What was it about him that attracted you as a writer and historian?
Well, you know this. When I'm going to Goliad and I'm going to San Jacinto, when I'm going to the Alamo, when I'm going to the land commissioner, George P. Bush, it's amazing. It's like sports teams. Brian, I think you're too nice to Sam Houston. Jim Fannin, I don't think you're cutting him a break. You know, keep in mind he had no choice. Hey, by the way, the guy that does it, Jim Bowie's really a great guy. Don't focus on, okay, William Barrett Travis. Yeah, he was a great writer, but man, he was just a lawyer and he was in the right place at the right time. Jim Bowie could have been running the Alamo. He was a better lead. I'm like, wow, guys. So what I try to do is I try to hit it with footnotes and quotes, and I do make some choices, and Sam Houston and the Alamo Avengers, because I want people to know it didn't end with that horrific defeat, even though it was a catastrophic defeat, but it sent a message: we're going to fight to the death, and you're going to have to kill us all to win. And I get it while it lives in infamy, but Sam Houston, the Alamo Avengers, I like a man that grows through the process. And when you are a kid that loses his dad at a young age and moves with his mom to the Midwest and they find a way with a farm to, and then they buy a shop. And the one thing pretty consistent is Sam Houston, the kid, is a bad farmer and not a good clerk. And all he wants to do is sit and read. He doesn't go to school. And then when he goes and lives with the American Indians, he learns about their way of life. And when he wants to go make money, he goes to make money. And then when he wants adventure, he joins the military. So he becomes a guy that drinks too much and gets involved in scandal we wouldn't consider a scandal today and has to leave the governorship. He's a guy with great courage, but he has to learn later that courage has to be calculated. And I love the growth part of it because no one's teaching him. He's learning for the school of hard knocks. He's learning in practical terms,
Yeah, that's
what
for
it's going to take to make it in this world. And he wasn't successful like Lincoln in everything he did. So I go, let me give this guy some credit. I'm in awe of him. He ends up stopped drinking. He ends up in a great relationship, becomes religious, and has 9 kids. So I'm like, wow, I love to tell this because I can relate. I think most people listening right now can relate to an imperfect person that wants to be better.
That's for sure. He was a huge personality, and shaped Texas politics. The book ends really with a kind of a synopsis of post San Jacinto, Texas. But the political parties in Texas right after the battle were Houston and anti-Houston, and until his death, really, he defined that. Does that sound familiar today to you?
Yes. But by the way, I went to the Alamo, and I'm not going to give you his name, but he was the guy who told me you 2 nights to Sam Houston. I'm like, okay,
I
I
think
can't
I might
forget
know
that.
who it was.
But I did what I did is I did hand the book to 2 or 3 historians, and I just go, listen, do you have a problem with this? Because I have so much respect for the history and your history. You live it. I can't tell you anything about Texas history. What I would like to do is try to dominate an area. I took 2.5 years and try to tell the story accurately. And if you want to know more, man, there's a lot more. It could be 800 pages, but I didn't want it to be. So what I find with Sam Houston is the same thing. What I also found admirable is he definitely had some Nostradamus in him, and the way he knew how fragile our democracy was and our country was, and the way he anticipated the division that was coming and feared it, the way he decided he told Texas, if you're going to go in the Confederacy and fight this war, it's going to be without me, and they said, okay, fine, it's going to be without you. And the point is, the word got out that he didn't want to fight in the war, and Lincoln reached out to him and said, I'll protect you if you can stay out of it. We really need you to stay out of it, and he couldn't because he cared about the Union first. So did Jackson. He showed it in South Carolina. So I love this. I love the texture to our history. Instead of we had a civil war, well, what happened around it and in it?
Right.
These were people who made decisions, very tough decisions. And and I was able to cut to the phrase and say something I know you know. He gets shot and almost killed, and he learns courage got to be calculated. When he goes to heal and goes back home and builds his way up, they end up being stationed in Washington. He looks around and he sees nothing but rubble, and he said, "Wow, this state, this capital was burned to the ground. The White House destroyed. How close did we come to total annihilation?" And the Hartford Convention, when the northern states got together and decided they were going to secede because they were so unhappy with the War of 1812. He knew how fragile our country was and would do anything to keep it together. And that shaped who he was. He was the right man at the right time to lead the right group of people against the Napoleon of the West, Santa Anna.
Well, tell me more about what you learned. You're not from Texas, we know, but tell us more about what you learned about Texas while you were working on the Sam Houston.
Well, in studying this, I realized this. I got so lucky in 1996 when I was asked to fill in on Fox News. And I was doing all sports back then. And I had a passion for news and a news background, but I was doing sports at an all sports station, TV station, and doing all sports radio. And they asked me to start filling in. And I loved the place. And then when things got serious, Princess Diana dies, the Bosnia War, the 2000 election, the 9/11 attacks, the Iraq War, no more sports, just do news. And I got to meet our audience as I write books because our audience is not in New York City. They would wish they want us to leave. Our audience is Texas, it's Indiana, it's Nebraska, it's North Carolina, it's South Carolina, it's most of Florida. And as I got a chance to meet them, I wanted to learn more about them, their history. And when I meet people in Texas, see their passion and pride, I was intimidated to do something like this. I said, man, these people have Texas history in their curriculum in grade school. What could I do?
Took
So I said,
twice,
what
two
if I
years.
told, right? And I said, what if I could tell their story to the whole country? But I won't come at it and pretend as if I'm educating Texans. I'm going to help tell this story. And the reason why I think I understand Texans is because they've been watching my show for 3 years and listening to it for 3 hours, for nine, and they know who I am, and they think I'm okay because they seem to watch and listen. And I feel more uh, in communication with you than I do from the people I grew up with in New York City. Although Long Island tends to be very patriotic, not all of it. It doesn't matter. They get drowned out by New York City and all their national votes and their presidential elections. So I feel if I tell your story and give people an additional reason to have pride in Texas, I would think we could all be pulling in the right direction.
Well, give the listeners a sense of what does someone from New York, your generic New Yorker, think when they hear Texas or the Alamo or Sam Houston? What do they know and what do they think, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, we learn it quickly. We don't spend a lot of time in, the grade school, grammar school, junior high school on it, but we learn it. But it's always the Alamo. I mean, San
Right.
Jacinto, Ken Burns had to tell me about San Jacinto. And he said to me, no one talks about it. He goes, people in Texas know about it, no one else knows about it. 18 minutes it took to win this. And then I met Stephen Moore, who wrote that great book
Oh
on it,
yeah, he did a great
Bruce
job.
Winders, who helped me out, and all these people that helped me, Douglas Brinkley. So um, I did not know about it, but when I went and saw it, and I did the features on television for it, and met the experts, and I saw how packed the Alamo is. I mean, what strikes me is this absolute victory for Santa Ana ends up being an absolute loss. He overplayed his hand. He goes for total annihilation, and the courage and conviction and pride that Texans have is not the win or lose, but what you did to win and what you sacrificed for freedom, and that's where the pride comes from. And you meet a Marcus Luttrell, and you get to know a Governor Perry. And I was lucky enough to meet George Bush. And George Bush, he may have roots in the Northeast, but man, this guy grew up in Texas,
Yeah.
and you see that swagger, but not a cockiness, a pride,
Yeah.
and the patriotism strikes me. 2019. If I want to find someone who understands bleeding red, white, and blue, I go to most cities outside Austin, uh, and I feel it, just this pride. And then you don't have to hand me anything. You don't have to make me famous. I don't need a reality show. I know who I am, and when it's time to fight, we're the ones who volunteer. So that I really feel those are the Fox viewers. People think we're conservative or we don't like Democrats. No, no, we just don't dislike the country. We don't get up every day and thinking, what did the country do wrong? We think about uh, what we do right on a daily basis and how our mistakes we go out of our way to try to correct. And I think that's laudable, and it's not explainable. And we're our hardest critic, and we're seeing a lot of that now. So I think in the past we fight in front of our strangers, which our parents told us not to do, and they think on the outside we're coming apart. But that's just the way we do things. When we have to, we come together, and I still believe we have that. But I believe Texas never lost that.
Well, that's certainly the spirit in Texas. We've most recently seen it, and we had a hurricane a couple of years ago, and it was striking to me as a native of Texas and a native of Houston that a lot of the national media was just stunned that people of different backgrounds, colors, races, religions, etc., would just come out and help each other. But to us, I mean, that's just Tuesday. So
Well, no, I think that's a great point, and I wish I thought of that example. And if you don't mind, I'm going to steal it from my other
yeah,
interviews.
absolutely.
When I saw the boats line up and the trucks line up as Houston was flooded, because my brother works for ServPro, and they told all the franchises to report there, and that's what he taught back to me. Because you wouldn't believe these people; they don't want any help. You
Right.
show up and help, and they say grab a hose, but they don't say, okay, I'm glad you're here. Now you do it. So he was amazed by that. We both grew up on Long Island, and I think that's part of the reason why you guys recovered so quick. You don't say, global warming caused this, and why did we build Houston so low, and why didn't we restructure the streets when we had to 50 years ago? That's all true, but how's that going to help me now?
Right.
And that's that practical feeling. I actually wrote a column without talking about the flooding, but about the attitude of 1836 and 1821 and 1824, and how they want an opportunity to be successful. Um, how they want an opportunity to be successful. You want to know guarantees, and how you went down there. You didn't ask for a rake and a gun, but that's really all you needed.
Well,
And that's how you survived. There was no supermarket or Home Depot to help you build your land or your empire, and you didn't ask for any guarantees for it. And it wasn't all a straight line to success, but you had to shoot your food or grow it.
right, exactly. And what do we do? One of the reasons I do this podcast is for that reason, to communicate that and remind everyone that that's where we come from, and that's what built whatever you love into what it is.
Right.
And the same reason you're doing these books and this book about Sam Houston. What else do we need to be doing to communicate that to people?
Well, it's got to start in the home. And this whole thing of blaming people when things go wrong, and I don't get the job I want, a career I want, I need a mental health day, or I need a safe space.
Right.
We're not tougher. We were never exposed to that. I don't know if it would have affected who we became if we were exposed to that. If we were in fourth and fifth grade and we were told life is stressful and rich people had to have cheated to get where they are, and you know, it really is not fair that everyone doesn't have the same health care. It's not fair that we all can't afford the same colleges. It's not fair that that you have a better school than you had a better high school than me, and it's not right if you can afford a private school. I mean, the whole blame culture I don't get. And the thing is, we don't deserve credit for not feeling that way. We should be thankful we weren't brought up that way. So
Right.
my sense is, and I'm guilty of it. Everyone has a natural proclivity to blame. Why me? Okay, why did I lose my job? I get it. Why didn't I get that house? I understand it. Why in 2008 did my financial planner put my stuff in the wrong spot? Be mad for a day, and then tell me what you're doing to fix it. You can't blame. You can't say, "Wow, automation took my job." Yes, be upset. Try to pick it out ahead of time and understand where you can go from here. Read and research and find out where the next great opportunity is. Don't turn around to the government and say, train me to do something else. You're going to be disappointed. You're going to be angry. You're going to be protesting when certain people don't win elections and coloring your hair and trying to buy pot and getting in another nose ring and figuring out how to afford it. Or uh, I just don't understand that mentality. And I'll give you an example is that for me personally, I'll just tell you that my dad died in ninth grade. My mom hadn't worked in 10 years. She had to go back and get a job. She had to figure out a way how to make the back room an apartment. Then she realized she couldn't make enough money until she got into the city. So then she had to get a job in the city. And then we had to handle paying for our own sports stuff. And then we had to apply for our own colleges. And we didn't think twice about it. I don't deserve respect for that, but I didn't expect anything different. Ronald Reagan was the one who turned around and says, you can't have Social Security past 18 when you lose a parent. It used to be up until you graduated college. So we lost $300 a month per child. And we said, I don't hate Ronald Reagan. He figured he had to do that to balance out Social Security. Now, where are we going to make up the $450 a month? And we don't deserve credit for that. That's just the way we were brought up. To deal with the circumstances you're given, don't blame. And that's what Texas teaches you. That's what I hope this story teaches you.
Well, I think it certainly does. I was about to say before you said it, you sound like a Texan to me, so come on down anytime.
Oh, I'd
And
love to.
now one more thing. The title of the book is Sam Houston and the Alamo Avengers, and it's sort of a theme of revenge at times in the book. Why did you pick that? How did you feel about that?
Well, I said avenge because not revenge. And I want avenge. They got it back. You wiped us out at Goliad. You killed 400 people, and you lied to do it. And then you went for complete, utter humiliating victory in the Alamo. And you had to, so-called, for lack of a better term, keep your powder dry to fight at the right time at the right place. And the runaway scrape, I think, says more. In life, sometimes you have to take it on in order to win eventually. You can't win every battle. The Astros had to strip it down and build up pitching and build up their farm system, and now they're built to win for a long period of time. But they had to tell their fans we're going to lose for a few years.
Yeah.
And that's what had to happen. In a short period of time, Houston had to go backwards in order to go forwards in order to get an absolute victory. And here's what I say by avenge. If he wanted revenge, he would have hung Santa Anna.
Right.
And this never would have looked the same. Instead, he was cool and calculated under pressure. He kept his composure, got him to sign over the state and call off the reinforcements. And if he was not cool and calculated and understood the objective, he would have went from short-term revenge. Instead, he avenged. And that's why I think it's people understand this reads like a novel because that's the way Texas chose to get their independence. And I want to gut it to the point where you're interested and leave enough there to know that if there's areas in which you want to know more, it's out there.
Well, you did a great job, Brian. You really did. And
Well, thank you.
It's always interesting to talk to people not from Texas who are diving into Texas history because we're so picky and critical all the time about that. But I think, modern communication always calls for stories. You can always go back to a story. Everybody likes a good story. And I certainly appreciate you marshaling your abilities and resources to tell the story of Texas.
Yeah, and look for the show on November 17th. I know that's a podcast you can download anytime, but if you do it, it's going to be on Sunday at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, and then repeated at 11. And that's Sam Houston and the Texas Fight for Freedom. And then I've got the book coming out. You can buy it as early as November 5th. And hopefully everyone likes it, even the audio's out there. I read the whole book. It took me 2.5 days. But the audio's out there. And I know some people in Texas are going to be a little angry at me, but just know I'm just trying to tell your story.
Well, we appreciate it. And thanks a lot for joining us on Wise About Texas, and good luck with the book.
Thanks so much, man. Thanks for the great questions.
Well, that wraps it up for this bonus episode of Wise About Texas. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Brian Kilmeade. If you want to meet him and give him your opinion of his view of Texas history, you can go to briankilmeade.com. That's BrianKilmeade.com/events and go catch him on his book tour. He will be in Texas, and as you can tell, loves to talk about Texas history. Thanks again for tuning in. Go out and do something for Texas today. And until next time, God bless Texas, and we'll see you down the road.